back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 267, Pop Goes the Sneasel. The episode begins with Ash and the gang having delivered Larvitar back to the Pokemon Preserve, so now they could go up the other path that Satchel had initially went up to get to the Johto League. They're about to battle there, with Ash very excited. Eventually, they reach very close by to Silvertown on Mount Silver, but they encounter a whole bunch of people gathered at a gate. And despite it being huge and closed, the people seem to be waiting for something, like they wanted it to open. Ash was curious as to what all these trainers were awaiting, so he decided to ask two nearby men what they were waiting for, leading the two men to reveal that on the other side of this gate was a temple, which also happened to be the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh's shrine, containing its legendary flame, known as the Sacred Fire. Due to the flame being from the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh, Ash knew that it must be important, and the two trainers told Ash that it was even more important, because Ho-Oh's flame served as the flame that lit the Johto League torch. Now, if you remember back during the Indigo League, Ash had to carry that torch, right? Well, it was the same for the Johto League, but instead of a Moltres flame lighting it, it was Ho-Oh's flame. Anyways, all the trainers essentially wanted to see the torch get lit. Upon hearing about the Sacred Fire, Ash was very excited to see it as well, as were Misty and Brock, questioning if they would really get to see it. And the two trainers then admitted that they weren't even sure, since they had been waiting for a long time, and no one had come out to open the gate, leading all the trainers to think that there must be some shit going on the other side of the gate. Since Ash and the gang really wanted to see the torch get lit though, and they couldn't advance to Silvertown until the gate opened anyways, they decided to wait, because this was the only way to Silvertown, through the gate. The crowd eventually grows even more, filled with people who wanted to see the torch get lit, and people who just wanted to get to Silvertown. And with neither of these things able to happen, all of the crowd started booing, leading a priest who was inside the temple to slightly open the gate. The priest tries to explain what's going on, but he can't, as everyone was complaining way too loud. Togepi ends up getting disturbed from all the noise, so it runs into the temple through the very small inch that the gate was open, as Pikachu follows after it, not wanting anything dangerous to happen to Togepi. As soon as Pikachu and Togepi enter though, the priest immediately notices them, of course, and stops them from running any farther. So when Ash and the gang ran into the temple as best as they could through the small little gap to retrieve Pikachu and Togepi, the priest stopped them and simply gave them back to them, having already picked them up off the ground. Ash and the gang thanked the priest for getting Pikachu and Togepi and apologized for them running off, leading the priest to state that it was fine, and focusing on warning Pikachu and Togepi to be more careful so that they wouldn't end up potentially getting lost again. Of course, Ash and the gang still wanted to enter the temple, so they tried to, only for the priest to introduce himself and explain to Ash and the gang and all the other trainers that the reason for the delay with unveiling the sacred Ho-Oh flame was because the torch runner hadn't even arrived yet. So the priest then shoves Ash and the gang out of the temple, making the rest of the crowd pissed off when they saw this, because, they had been waiting for a long time, and the priest was forcing people out. Just then, two trainers run down from the shrine that was inside the temple, running down some stairs to get to the temple entrance, and they complain to the priest that they couldn't train at the shrine with all of this racket, because they weren't able to focus, so both of their Pokemon ended up getting injured as a result. Reasoning that since they couldn't focus, they were making a whole bunch of mistakes in battle, and almost got their Poliwrath and Butterfree killed. As they complain about the danger of all of the loud trainers, they run off to the Pokemon Center to heal their Pokemon, as they complain about how they just wanted some good training before the league. Upon seeing these two trainers run off to the Pokemon Center, all of the other trainers were furious that the priest had let them inside, but not the rest. The man seems to sigh in annoyance at the trainer's anger, as he claims that he was busy getting the flame ready for when the torch runner would arrive, and he shuts the door on all of the trainers, making them even angrier. Since Ash and Gang still wanted to see the flame, they decide to wait with the rest of the trainers still, hoping the priest would eventually open the door, and he actually eventually did, seemingly realizing that there was now no trainers inside of the temple, and he wanted some, as he let Ash and the gang inside of the temple before closing the door again, pissing off the rest of the crowd that even more trainers were being given special treatment. As for Ash, he was now intrigued not only by waiting for the Ho-Oh flame, but also getting the opportunity to train at the place where the flame was lit, and explains that he was going to be a competitor in the Silver Conference as well, and asked to train at the temple, just as those two trainers had. This leads the priest to explain that the two trainers weren't actually training against each other, and he had told them to say that, so that they could have a cover lie for what they were actually doing. Ash questioned what this was, leading the priest to admit that not only had the torch runner not arrived yet, but the priest hadn't even been able to light the torch either, because he hadn't been able to reach the place where the fire was, and explained that he had instructed multiple trainers, including those two, to try and get the flame, but they couldn't, and ran off as a result, using the training as a lie, so that none of the trainers would find out that the torch couldn't get accessed, because he didn't want the trainers to panic that there wouldn't be a league if the torch couldn't be lit. Ash questioned why none of the trainers could retrieve the sacred Ho-Oh flame, leading the priest to admit that there was some danger blocking any of the trainers from getting it, which explained why the trainers' Pokemon actually looked injured. And he then explained that the reason why he had let Ash, Misty, and Brock into the temple was because he wanted them to be the next trainers to try and retrieve the flame. since everyone else he had asked had run away in fear. Right before Ash could accept, though, another trainer then pounded on the gates, somehow having overheard what the priest said, despite all the yelling outside, claiming that he would like to help. The priest excitedly lets him and the trainer's Houndoom in. Ash and the gang question who he was, thinking he must have been strong if he felt that he could help. And the trainer reveals that his name was Harrison, and he was from a Little Root town in the Hoenn region. Yeah, that's right, guys. There was another region. I wonder where Ash is going to go after the league then, huh? Anyways, Brock was intrigued by Harrison being from the Hoenn region, as he had heard of it before, and knew that it was on the other side of the ocean. Ash wondered where Hoenn was, but before he could inquire to its exact location, Brock reminded Ash that they were being impolite to the trainer by not introducing themselves, so they did just that, only to get cut off by the priest, who reminded Ash and the gang of their job, along with Harrison, which was to retrieve the flame. Ash questioned what the rush was, since he still believed that the torch runners weren't there, but the priest clarified that he had lied about this, just so that he had an excuse for the rest of the trainers, and revealed that the other torch runners were there, as he showed them to Ash and the gang, waiting inside the shrine, really fucking annoyed because they just wanted to begin the run, but they couldn't. Noticing how the priest had lied to all the trainers about the torch runners' whereabouts, Ash and the gang and Harrison were now less inclined to help out a liar. This disappointed the priest, who stated that getting the flame was too important, so Ash and the gang should put aside their distaste for the priest, but Ash and the gang countered that even though they were very intrigued by the flame, it couldn't have possibly been important enough to help out a liar. This led the priest to explain why the Ho-Oh flame was so important, reciting the lore of it, and Harrison happened to know the lore, which was the initial reason why he wanted to help in the first place, so he helped the priest with his explanation. Essentially, a huge-ass war between people that spanned many years and many, many battles was fought at the shrine that Ash and the gang and Harrison were currently at, called the Ho-Oh Shrine. The war became so terrible and destructive that all of Silvertown was soon affected, along with Silvertown's population of Pokémon and Silvertown's vegetation and houses, as a whole bunch of houses, buildings, and trees were destroyed. Plants were killed as well, and lakes dried up, and Pokémon eventually got involved in the conflict, not fighting, but the people were essentially just fighting so much that the Pokémon got caught in the crossfire, with even strong Pokémon like Fearow, Ursaring, Scyther, and Rhydon being knocked down, and severely injured. With the land entirely decimated, Ho-Oh took action, appearing after a battle, and it unleashed a rose-colored flame that was so strong that it was not only able to destroy all the weapons used in the wars and battles, preventing them from happening again, but Ho-Oh's flame actually was able to restore life as well, not just burn and end it, as even though Ho-Oh's fire was destructive, the special pattern that the fire had went across the land also caused life to rejuvenate. Basically, this fire was somehow able to restore the trees, plants, and bring water back to the lake as a result. The warring people saw this as a miracle, and they became intrigued by the fire's properties, and since they didn't have any weapons to fight anymore, they decided to all band together and honor the fire, instead of fighting each other. So not only did Ho-Oh's fire restore the land, but it also caused peace between humans. As the now allied humans walked around their restored forest, they noticed that there was still one tree that had a little bit of fire on it. This tree wasn't stumbled upon for quite a long time, so everyone was immensely shocked as to how the fire was still burning. This just made all the humans even more impressed by Ho-Oh's fire, and they decided to somehow gather the fire in a torch by knocking down the tree branch that was on fire, and they decided to build a shrine, this one, and put the torch inside of it as a symbol of the new peace between humans. Essentially, that's why the flame was so sacred and important, because it simplified the connection between humans, which was definitely exemplified at the Pokemon League, which was why it was used during every Johto League Silver Conference, and why the fire had to be rescued and protected at all cost, as some people in Silvertown feared that without the fire, the peace between humans would leave once again. Ash was inspired by the story of the flame, and now decided that he was going to help out the priest, though questioned why the priest just couldn't get the flame on his own if he was simply just sending trainers to go get it inside the shrine, meaning that the shrine must have still held the flame. The priest clarified that this was the case, but multiple trainers had reported when they were going to go grab the flame, along with several of the torch runners, that a Sneasel, along with a Machop and Machoke, had been guarding the flame and hurting anyone who tried to retrieve it, which was why all the trainers were severely tired and all their Pokemon were injured, with some of the trainers even having broken bones and serious injuries. Adding that some of the trainers were now even in hospital with casts now. We then see a flashback of several of these trainers going up into the shrine to grab the torch, only to be scared by a Sneasel which appeared out of nowhere, but thinking that they could get past it, only for a Machop and Machoke to reveal themselves and then beat the trainers to shit. The priest was extremely concerned by all of these trainers being injured, and was worried that no trainers would be able to retrieve the sacred Ho-Oh flame, meaning that the ceremony for the Silver Conference couldn't start, meaning that there would be no Silver Conference this year. Ash, however, reassured the priest that he would do everything he could to get the flame back, because he wanted to compete in the Johto League after all his hard work. Harrison still wanted to help as well, although his primary reason was because he really wanted to try and capture the Sneasel, as he knew that it was relatively rare. And he was extremely confident that he could capture one, stating that he would only help out Ash and the gang if they needed his help, if they agreed not to capture the Sneasel. And Ash obviously agreed to this, not caring about catching the Sneasel himself, just wanting to take the flame. As he then looked up Sneasel in his Pokedex to learn more about it. Brock and Misty agreed to help as well, as Ash realized that he didn't know the exact location of where the shrine was, leading the priest to point up a fleet of stone steps as everyone went up them towards the shrine. Ash determined to stop the Sneasel and Machop and Machoke. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were spying on Ash and the gang from the forest and had overheard them talking about the sacred flame, and had decided that since it was so epic and rare, they were going to try and steal it from the shrine and then sell it off for some money. With James also suggesting that while they were in Silvertown, they should go to the Pokemon League HQ there, where the Silver Conference was likely to be held, and steal several valuable items from the League staff and several of the coming trainers, believing that they could use the items as ransom so they could capture some Pokemon from the League staff and trainers. Jessie loved this idea, but she decided that it would be better to steal the flame first, since they could perhaps even use that for blackmailing as well, since everyone viewed the flame with such high esteem, so they would likely give up their Pokemon to protect it. They were so excited to steal the flame that they managed to get to the shrine up the stairs before Ash and the gang, Harrison, and the priest. But as they began to hurriedly rush in to the shrine, this alerted the Machoke, who punched them the fuck out, aside from Meowth, as he was too low, since, he was shorter than Jessie and James. Team Rocket managed to get back up, but before they could continue walking, their path was blocked by Machoke, along with Machop, as both of them spread their legs wide apart to make sure that Team Rocket couldn't get past their thick-ass legs. Team Rocket began to get extremely angry at the Machoke and Machop, telling them to get the fuck out of the way. They suddenly were surprised as the Sneasel showed up, causing them to panic, thinking that Sneasel would be very strong, just like the Machop and Machoke, and they wondered what the three Pokemon could do together. Upon seeing all three of the Pokemon together, Jessie and James realized that not only should they try and get the flame, but they should try and capture the Pokemon as well, since they were likely strong. Jessie was only more determined to capture the Sneasel when Meowth translated Sneasel saying something, which was it demanding Team Rocket to get the fuck away from the shrine, which it called its turf. Since Jessie was angry at the Sneasel, she wanted to capture it so that she could make it suffer, and retorted back that the shrine would actually be Team Rocket's territory once they took the flame. Believing that Team Rocket could make the shrine their new base, since the trainers or the priest likely wouldn't interject, since they would be worried about the safety of the flame if Team Rocket were able to retrieve it. So if Team Rocket essentially was like, yo, we won't destroy the flame if you let us take your shrine, then they would likely agree. In order to knock out Sneasel to make it easier to capture, Jessie sent out her Arbok and commanded it to use Headbutt on Sneasel, although Sneasel was able to dodge Arbok and scratch it, before knocking it out with a Fury Swipes attack. Jessie and James were just now even more motivated to get the Sneasel, as they were impressed by the Sneasel's strength. As Jessie comments that was one hell of a Fury Swipes, almost being a slash attack. Meowth was jealous though, as he was known as Team Rocket's Fury Swiper, and lied that he had seen better moves from a baby Weedle. Jessie figured that Meowth was lying, so she dared him to prove that he was so much stronger than the Sneasel by using his own Fury Swipes on it, since he was known for his Fury Swipes. So Jessie forcibly literally fucking tossed Meowth into the battle, as Meowth used Fury Swipes. But Sneasel was able to dodge this as well, and go in for an actual slash this time, sending Meowth back into the knocked out Arbok. This causes Arbok to fall, even though it was already knocked out, as it gets launched into Jessie and James, knocking them down. And with all of Team Rocket down, Sneasel then ordered its Machop and Machoke to attack Team Rocket, and they did, sending Team Rocket blasting off. But not before Team Rocket hurt themselves a bit by sliding across the dirt from the force of the attack, as well as a second attack being a body slam. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang and Harrison, they were slowly making their way up the stairs, trying to not startle the Sneasel, Machop, and Machoke, who they believed to be at the top. However, Ash got impatient, realizing that there probably wasn't much time until the league was supposed to begin, so he began running up the stairs, which alerted the Machoke to his location, right as Ash arrived at the top of the steps. Machop then shows up as well, as Machop and Machoke both go to use Karate Chop on Ash to prevent him from reaching the shrine, and although Machop and Machoke both missed, Ash was extremely startled by their sudden appearance, as he almost fell down the stairs, since he leaned back to avoid the Karate Chops. He did fall down a couple steps, but Brock, Misty, and Harrison quickly saved him by stopping his fall any further, and then Brock and Harrison pulled him back up to the top, as Brock, Harrison, and Misty, along with Harrison's Houndoom, all reached the top of the stairs, where Machop and Machoke were standing, with their legs wide open, preventing Ash and the gang from reaching the shrine, leading Ash and the gang to come to the conclusion that the priest was right, and there was in fact this Machop and Machoke blocking the entrance to the shrine, leading Misty to believe that Sneasel would soon show up as well. So she knew that they would have to get rid of the Machop and Machoke first, so that they could only focus on the Sneasel, since Sneasel would likely be the biggest threat. So Misty handed Togepi over to Brock, as she sent out her Corsola, instructing Harrison and Brock to stay back with her, so that Brock could keep Togepi safe, and Harrison could help her out with dealing with the Machop and Machoke, which allowed Ash to go past Machop and Machoke further up towards the shrine. Ash was hesitant to leave the others behind, but Harrison assured Ash that they had the situation under control, and instructed him to go up to the shrine, as Harrison then sent out his Houndoom, and his Houndoom used Flamethrower, and Misty's Corsola used Spike Cannon to deal with the Machop and Machoke, holding them off. Machop ends up being defeated by Harrison's Houndoom's Flamethrower, while Machoke ends up being defeated by Corsola's Spike Cannon. All of this allows Ash to run up to the end of the area as he reaches the shrine that had the flame inside, as he opens up the doors to retrieve it. However, he's enamored by it and gazes at the flame for too long, so the Sneasel then jumps out from a nearby bush, startling Ash as he almost gets slashed. Ash sees that Misty was right about her assumption of Sneasel showing up as he sends out his Totodile to take on the Sneasel, trying to stop it as he orders it to use water gun, warning it not to extinguish the flame with its water. However, Sneasel jumped to dodge the water gun, just as Ash had dodged Sneasel's slash attack towards him. This caught Totodile off guard, allowing Sneasel to hit it with both a slash and a feint attack, injuring Totodile, but thankfully, Totodile was able to get back up. Meanwhile, back with the others, the Machop and Machoke had managed to regain consciousness, but Misty and Harrison finished them off quickly, as Corsola used Tackle on the Machoke, and Houndoom used Flamethrower on Machop. With both of those Pokemon knocked out against trees, this allowed Brock, Misty, and Harrison to run up and catch up to Ash, as Totodile was still battling Sneasel, as Totodile tried to fire yet another water gun, but Sneasel dodged it again, and then went in for a Shadow Ball attack that threw Totodile right into Ash, sending them both down a hill, colliding into a tree after a few seconds of falling. Although this collision was rough, Ash and Totodile were relieved not to have fallen down any farther, and they were even more relieved as Harrison, Misty, and Brock then showed up to comfort Ash, having saw that last Shadow Ball attack. As Harrison suggested that since Totodile looked injured, Ash recall it into his Pokeball, since it was too weak to deal with Sneasel anyways. As Ash obliged, recalling Totodile, he didn't get mad at Harrison, as he knew that Harrison didn't mean that comment as an insult, and he knew that Harrison was right after all. Totodile was too weak, and Sneasel was just too fucking strong. So, Ash and the gang decided to come up with a new plan to try and stop the Sneasel, with Ash admitting that Sneasel was stronger than he expected. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were exhausted from getting their ass beat by the Machop and Machoke, and they had blasted off into a forest. And they were especially still hung up on how fucking strong that Sneasel was, really wanting to capture it for themselves, as they began to plot their revenge on the Pokemon so that they could capture them. Meowth, though, still didn't really want the Sneasel, as he was getting a little bit jealous of Team Rocket only caring about the Sneasel and not him, as he stated that Team Rocket could get their revenge on the Sneasel, Machop, and Machoke by training up Meowth and having him evolve into a Sneasel, but James disappointedly reminded Meowth that he couldn't evolve into Sneasel, and only a Persian, with Jessie adding another insult, being that even as a Persian, Meowth would still struggle to defeat Sneasel. Meowth retorted that he didn't even need to evolve into a goddamn Persian. He still thought that he could beat Sneasel just as a regular-ass Meowth, although Jessie obviously reminded him that he couldn't, disappointing Meowth as he fell to the ground in shame, as he realized that Jessie and James were really doubting him now, and he didn't like that. Just then, Jessie gets an idea as she pulls James for a private chat away from Meowth. Jessie suggested that her and James should permanently get rid of Meowth and replace him with the Sneasel, since Sneasel wasn't any different from Meowth anyways, being a cat Pokemon, and it was stronger, so there was no drawbacks. James, still enamored by the Sneasel, happily agreed to switch out Meowth for it, as he and Jessie then fantasized about all of the adventures they could have with Sneasel as opposed to Meowth, and also visualized Sneasel participating in Team Rocket's motto, doing Meowth lines. Unbeknownst to Team Rocket, Meowth had been eavesdropping on Jessie and James' conversation, having snuck up to them, and was extremely sad and irritated to learn that his teammates would plan on ditching him for a Sneasel of all Pokemon, and just mad that his teammates were thinking of ditching him at all after all they had been through. Man, this plot sounds familiar. Team Rocket had tried to ditch Meowth before. Damn, can you guys stop repeating plot lines? That's why I'm excited to get to Horizons. Anyways, thankfully for Meowth, James had since now lost his complete obsession over Sneasel, as he compared Sneasel to Meowth, admitting that yes, Sneasel was stronger, but while he was comparing it to Meowth, he couldn't help but remember all the good times that Team Rocket had with Meowth, and he began to cry at the thought of ditching Meowth, telling Jessie to think of the memories as well, explaining that no Pokemon could ever replace Meowth. James clearly wasn't feeling that bad regarding Meowth, though, as James was quickly convinced by Jessie, once again, that Sneasel was just way fucking better than Meowth, and that them having Sneasel would be better for Team Rocket overall, since they'd be able to capture more Pokemon. So yeah, James very quickly dropped his sympathy for Meowth, agreeing with Jessie once again to have Sneasel join them. Meowth then sees Jessie and James coming out of the bushes, having finished their conversation, so he runs back to the initial spot that the three of them were at, so that Team Rocket didn't know that he was eavesdropping. And when Team Rocket arrived in front of him, Jessie immediately informs him that Meowth was now kicked out of Team Rocket, with Sneasel being his replacement, leading Meowth to rebuttal that he shouldn't be replaced, and if anything, he should at least share a place in Team Rocket with Sneasel, so that Team Rocket can now have two mascot Pokemon. He was willing to settle for anything, as long as he could remain apart. Hearing this, Jessie and James got the idea to make Meowth essentially their servant, as opposed to another mascot, so that they could still have Meowth do dirty work, but they could impress everyone they stole from with a Sneasel instead. They hoped Meowth didn't hear their new plan, as they lied to Meowth that he could in fact be a mascot still, as long as they could get Sneasel as well. Though Meowth questions why the fuck Team Rocket had suddenly changed their mind about keeping him on the team so fast, leading Jessie to come up with a lie as an excuse, stating that they were simply so enamored with the Sneasel that they didn't think about how kicking Meowth out of the team could have impacted Meowth's feelings. Meowth didn't fall for this at all. He knew that Team Rocket was fucking playing him, but he still wanted to be a part of the team in some way, so he simply acted like he believed Team Rocket's lie, and agreed to help them capture the Sneasel, as they came up with a plan. Although he definitely wasn't happy about it, just pretending to be, but unbeknownst to Meowth, it seemed as though James still wasn't super happy with what Jesse and James were actually plotting to do anyways, thinking that it wasn't right to lie to Meowth and make him their servant. Man, I guess James did care about Meowth after all. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang and Harrison by the tree, they had spent some time planning how to deal with Sneasel, expecting to only have to face it. But when they ran back up the stairs to the shrine to go to the Sneasel and try and stop it, they were met first by Machoke and Machop as they recovered. Ash and Harrison didn't panic though, as Ash sent out his Phanpy and Harrison sent out his Houndoom, ordering them to take out Machop and Machoke, who were standing guard in front of the shrine. Phanpy and Houndoom indeed focused on Machop and Machoke, even as Sneasel then showed up, since Harrison declared that since they already knew Machop and Machoke's battling style, they would be way easier to deal with than Sneasel, with Phanpy using a takedown on Machoke and Houndoom using headbutt on Machop. These attacks send Machoke and Machop flying back, making Ash and Harrison believe that the two Pokemon were down for the count. So they quickly get up, being ordered by Sneasel as they try to attack back, still guarding the shrine, also per Sneasel's orders. Ash already began focusing on Sneasel though, walking towards it as Phanpy and Houndoom dealt with the Machop and Machoke, since although the Machop and Machoke tried to attack back, they couldn't, as they were in so much pain from Phanpy and Houndoom's attacks that it was almost like they were confused and could barely even open their eyes because of the pain, so they couldn't see where they were going as they walked towards Phanpy and Houndoom, actually tripping over them as it caused them to fall down the steps and crashing into the same tree that Ash and Totodile hit. But since Machop and Machoke were so buff, they go straight through the tree and hit the ground hard, which surprises the priest, who had been watching this whole ordeal from the bottom of the stairs, shocked to see that Machoke and Machop had actually been defeated by some trainers. As the priest examined the fainted Machop and Machoke, Harrison quickly joined Ash by Sneasel, reminding Ash that he was going to capture it before Ash could defeat it. Before Harrison or the Sneasel could do anything, though, Ash and the gang were then shocked to see not the Meowth balloon, but a Sneasel balloon, as Team Rocket had shown up. Wow, they really must like Sneasel, huh? Team Rocket then jump out of the Sneasel balloon, doing their motto, as they explain how they made it, as Meowth then also comes out of the Meowth balloon that he had landed, although he was now in a Sneasel costume. Ash points out that Meowth was just wearing a costume, wondering why Meowth was doing so, although admits that he initially fell for Meowth's trick. Much to Ash's shock, though, it appeared that Meowth's Sneasel disguise had somehow fooled Harrison, Misty, and Brock, as well as the actual Sneasel, as Jesse and James happily used this to their advantage, telling Meowth that he was supposed to fool the Sneasel and go up to it with a box, claiming that it was a present from Sneasel to Sneasel, when Jesse laughed, revealing that in reality, this box had a smoke bomb in it, which would create a distraction, allowing Team Rocket to capture the Sneasel in a bag, and then run away with it while the smoke was still there. So, Team Rocket put their plan into action, with everyone still thinking that Meowth was a Sneasel, with the exception of Ash, as Meowth walked up to Sneasel with the box with the bomb in it. Meowth, still fooling the Sneasel, was about to have the Sneasel actually grab the box from him, but Meowth, of course, wanted to be the only Team Rocket mascot, not the second one, not even knowing that Jesse and James were planning to not even have him be that high up on the Team Rocket totem pole. So, he decided to tell Sneasel about how it shouldn't take the box, since there was a smoke bomb in it, and how Jesse and James were planning to capture it, although it made sure to whisper so that Jesse and James didn't hear, suggesting that Sneasel throw the present back at Team Rocket so that they could become enveloped with smoke and actually not be able to see where they were going or escape. However, Sneasel then noticed that Meowth wasn't in fact a Sneasel, and thought that maybe Meowth was trying to trick it himself, even though he was telling the truth, as it angrily used Slash on Meowth to cut open his costume, revealing his true identity, much to Misty, Brock, and Harrison's shock, as Meowth flies backward from the attack, but not before Sneasel's Slash had accidentally slashed open the present along with slashing Meowth, causing the smoke bomb to unleash anyways. This obviously made smoke appear, even though this wasn't the Sneasel's intention, making Team Rocket happy, believing that Meowth may have actually tried to help them, even though he didn't, as Jesse and James ran into the smoke to capture Sneasel. And they do, proceeding to grab the Sneasel, who was seemingly very confused, since Ash and the gang couldn't do anything to stop Team Rocket, since they were blinded by the smoke. As they then run back to the Meowth balloon and take off, laughing with happiness at the fact that Sneasel was now theirs, and they could now kick Meowth out of Team Rocket, or at least make Meowth their servant. Even James was happy to get rid of Meowth and say goodbye to him, as his love for Sneasel had come back upon capturing it. However, much to Jessie's dismay, her laughter and pure happiness at getting Sneasel were soon replaced by complete despair, as Team Rocket realized that they had actually grabbed Meowth, since they couldn't see what they had grabbed either in the smoke, and that explained why Meowth was confused when he was grabbed, as he figured that Team Rocket would actually try and grab the Sneasel, not him. But anyways, Meowth was currently angry as fuck, obviously, for Jesse and James being super excited to get rid of him, as he scratched them in the faces with Fury Swipes, screaming at them for even thinking of betraying him, wanting a lot of revenge, so he Fury Swipes them for a long time. Jesse gets pissed off at this, as she and James yell at Meowth to stop Fury Swiping them, but Meowth obviously doesn't listen, so Jessie tries to forcibly get Meowth off of them, as she angrily throws Meowth away, hoping to get rid of his ass for good. Unfortunately for Team Rocket though, Meowth lands on the Sneasel balloon, and since his claws were still out from all the Fury Swiping, his claws managed to pop the balloon, sending Team Rocket blasting off. Meowth was pleased with this, as he purposely scratched the Meowth balloon to send Team Rocket blasting off even further. Although, Meowth's anger would eventually fade because we need status quo, and yeah, he was more than happy to join back with Team Rocket, happy that he had stopped them from getting Sneasel. And he figured that Team Rocket had paid enough for their bad attitude with all the scratching, and now this blast off. Back on the ground, it was revealed that during the commotion with the smoke bomb, Sneasel had jumped out of the way to avoid the smoke, although it fell in the process and couldn't get back up due to all of the commotion distracting it. However, when the smoke cleared and Ash and the gang were able to see the Sneasel, they were shocked to see it get back up, and were also shocked to see that it hadn't been taken by Team Rocket, as they figured that Team Rocket would definitely take the opportunity to steal it, unaware of what had actually happened. Anyways, Harrison was very happy that Sneasel was still there, and decided to finally try and capture it, declaring that now was his time to capture the Sneasel, as it was likely distracted from just getting up from the smoke, and he was confident that he could capture it, stating that he had a Pokemon that he hadn't unveiled to Ash and the gang yet that he could use, as he sent it out. Much to Ash and the gang's shock, it was a Pokemon that none of them, even Brock, had ever seen before. And that's because, unbeknownst to them, it was a Generation 3 Pokemon known as Blaziken, as Brock speculated that since Harrison was from the Hoenn region, this Pokemon must have been from the Hoenn region as well, which would explain why Ash and the gang had never seen it, since they had never been there. Ash tries to use his Pokedex on the Blaziken to find out more about it, but it unfortunately has no data due to the Pokedex not having any data on Pokemon from Hoenn. The battle then starts, with Sneasel also shocked to be battling a Blaziken for the first time, as Blaziken goes in for a quick attack, and Sneasel tries to dodge as it usually did, but Blaziken was too strong, and Sneasel was hit. Although it tried to counter with a Shadow Ball, but Blaziken was actually able to dodge, and then use Flamethrower to weaken Sneasel, and then finished it off with a Fire Punch, knocking it down so Harrison could now capture it, as he threw a Pokeball, successfully capturing Sneasel, as Ash congratulated him on his capture, while also calling out how good Harrison's Blaziken was, knowing its name when Harrison called out to it. However, Misty and Brock soon cut this moment off, as they reminded Ash that now that Sneasel was captured and Machoke and Machop were defeated, there was no one blocking the shrine, so they could get the Sacred Flame from Ho-Oh. So, Ash ran up to the shrine and opened the doors, finding a torch beside the flame, as he put the flame inside, and take it back down to the priest, giving it to him, as the priest thanked Ash and the gang and Harrison for their help, as he then opens up the gate to the rest of the trainers, finally ending their anger, as they can now all come to watch the runners make their run, as the flame is then delivered to one of the torch runners, making everyone pleased, as now the Silver Conference could officially begin once the flame was delivered to the Silver Conference Stadium, as that meant that the opening ceremony could begin. Right before the torch runners could start running, though, Ash and the gang then noticed the Machop and Machoke back up and flexing their muscles, leading Ash and the gang to worry that the Machop and Machoke were trying to steal back the flame. But the priest assured them that after Machop and Machoke had landed by him, he had actually made a deal with them to permanently hire them to protect the shrine, stating that even though the people used the flame, they used it to honor the peace between humans, and the Machop and Machoke respected the use of the flame, so they decided to help guard the shrine and the flame on the days when it wasn't being used. Yay! The torch runners then finally begin running to the Silver Conference Stadium, as they run out of the shrine area towards it, as all of the trainers who had been let into the shrine area cheer on the runners, including Ash and the gang, as Ash was inspired by the torch runners, just as he was during the Indigo League, as it makes him determined to win the Silver Conference, setting his heart on it fully. Ash's thoughts are then interrupted, as much to his shock, Harrison reveals that he was going to be competing in the Silver Conference as well, and was looking forward to seeing Ash at the conference and potentially facing him. Ash didn't say anything back, as he was too surprised, but as Harrison and his Houndoom then walk away, Ash says goodbye for now to Harrison, as he states that he was sure he and Harrison would eventually battle in the Silver Conference, with Harrison agreeing, as they declare to eventually battle no matter what, with Ash further declaring that he was going to do more than just beat Harrison, but win the entire Silver Conference, beating all the strong Johto trainers no matter what. We then see one last shot of Mount Silver, as Misty wishes Ash good luck, but reminds him that it wouldn't be that easy to win the Silver Conference tournament. Despite this, Ash still remained as confident as ever, although he tried not to get overconfident, because that led to his fall in the Indigo League.